Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at AmericanExpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
And there's no dialogue for sort of 12 minutes, and she's eating that pie for just 8 minutes.
Yeah.
To be sat in a cinema with a room full of people just sat watching Rooney Mara eat a pie sounds ridiculous. It sounds like someone taking the piss out of this kind of film. But I think it's a really profound scene about grief. You can see everything about her internal life in that performance.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 113 of Flixwatcher podcast. I'm joined today by Helen O'Hara.
Hello.
Zoe.
Hi.
And Helen Sadler.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about a ghost story.
Come find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod. Visit the website flixwatcher.tv for full listings, and don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us an awesome review.
So all films were available on Netflix at the time of recording, guys. Just as a bit of a warning, there is some bad language and there will be spoilers. You have been warned.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. In our studio today, we have Zoe and Helen. If you would like to say hello and introduce yourself to our lovely listeners, please.
Hi, I'm Zoe Jeyes. I'm, I guess, most relevant to this, a comedy and podcast programmer at King's Place in London, in King's Cross.
Basically, you own the podcast, live podcasts in London, which means UK.
If anything's happening with podcasts, it's at King's Place.
And you've orchestrated it.
I like to think that we are the unofficial home of live podcasting in London. Thank you.
What do we need to do to make it official?
I don't know. I don't know who would award us that. Maybe I should just start saying it.
Yeah.
Do it. Make some t-shirts.
Great.
Yeah, you become the source once you start claiming it.
Great. Okay, we're the home of live podcasting in London, if not the UK. And I also program and produce the London Podcast Festival.
Which is awesome.
Thank you.
And hello, I'm Helen O'Hara. I'm editor-at-large for Empire Magazine, and I'm on the Empire podcast every week, or when I'm in the country. And then I also just write about film. I've written a couple of books. I've written a book about 80s movies. I've just finished one on superhero movies.
Oh, wow.
And then I write for whoever will pay me, to be honest. I'm not fussy. If you would like a writer, then come talk to me, yeah.
I've read your 80s book and love it.
Oh, thank you, very kind.
And Helen and I talk about 80s stuff. Well, we're both children of the 80s. I was born on the 1st of January 1980, so...
Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness.
To envelop everything that happened in that
that
decade.
Makes
Wow,
yeah.
You are Mr. 80s.
What do you think makes it so special about the 80s, or is it just our kind of age group that's...
I think there's a bit of that, and I think there's a bit of the fact that it was sort of the boomers had come of age and were kind of controlling the filmmaking, and they were such a hugely powerful generation in that sense. But I think it was just this... It was the point in the filmmaking process. So you had the 70s kind of, you'd had all the kind of studio stuff, 50s and 60s, and that had fallen apart, and then you got this kind of wave of like indie movies and really daring filmmaking in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. And then I think with the 80s, what they'd realized in the late 70s, Spielberg and Lucas and all the rest, they'd kind of realized, hang on, there is money to be made by entertaining people. And they started trying to do that. And genuinely, I think it's as simple as that. I think they started trying to make big films to entertain large numbers of people again.
So you reckon the 60s and 70s were a bit more po-faced?
I mean, honestly, they were like, I love a lot of those films, and I'm not
thinking about Godfather here.
Half a minute, isn't it?
I don't mean to be unappreciative, but like they're a little bit
not much fun.
I think that's a genuinely fair point, isn't it?
Yeah,
because even things that weren't out and out comedies, they were still like fun and you'd sit down with a big smile on your face I mean, like Ghostbusters is classed as a comedy, but it's not that funny, but you're still like smiling all the way through it and things like that. So
exactly.
It's pretty funny.
It is pretty funny.
it's pretty.
And then you also had all the state-of-the-art stuff where effect had gotten to a point where you could do these crazy big space things and aliens and,
Cars going back to the future.
Cars going back to the future. And, so that obviously was a part of it as well. But I do think there's something about just a reaction to the dare. I mean, it was maybe less daring in some ways and more daring in others, the filming of the 80s, but it's stuck around, God knows.
Cool. So here we're here talking about a ghost story, which Zoe, you have chosen for us to talk about today.
I have, yes.
Can you tell us why you chose it and give us a 2-minute synopsis of the story?
Sure. A synopsis of this film probably wouldn't be 2 minutes long, but I will tell you what the film's about and then tell you why I picked it. So the film is really about a nameless young couple who are preparing to move from their dilapidated house in Texas. And quite early on in the film, there is a car accident and Casey Affleck's character dies, leaving Rooney Mara to grieve and him to come to grips with the afterlife. Completely silently, and that's it really. That's the plot of the film. And I chose it because last year, or was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago,
I saw it at Sundance, London. I was lucky enough to see it with a Q&A with David Lowery afterwards, and I was completely bowled over by the film. I was really glad that I got to see it in a cinema because I think had I watched it at home, I don't think I would have had the same experience. I think there might have been a bit of screening going on and I might have been looking at my phone every so often. And it's a film that requires some patience and concentration. I loved seeing it in a completely full cinema full of people who were sort of really rapt and hypnotized by it. And, over the silent credits at the end, you could really hear a pin drop. And then David Lowery came out, and David Lowery is a babe. My goodness, he is a handsome man. He has the most incredible blue eyes. So that was a bonus. And it was a really fascinating Q&A and I learnt a lot. And it was one of the very rare occasions where I felt strongly enough about the film that I would ask a question. And he was very charming and it was a really terrific answer. So I think it holds a special place in my heart because of that, because David Lowery maintained eye contact with me for several minutes while he answered my stupid question.
What was the question?
So I prefaced it by saying, I apologise if this is a stupid question, to which he said very charmingly, there are no stupid questions, which is not true. But I said, apart from the obvious, there are some obvious scenes, was it always Casey Affleck under the sheet? I was very interested in whether that was the case. And luckily the answer was no, it wasn't. And he talked quite a lot about how, to start with, they had intended to have him under the sheet the whole time. But it was too obviously him. You could tell it was him from his gait.
Right.
I think the scene where he walks home across the field, you could tell it was Casey Affleck walking across a field under a sheet, and they wanted it to have, a more otherworldly quality than that. So sometimes it is him in the stationary scenes, when he's in the house, standing in a corner. But they also I think he said they use the AD quite a lot, and just because he's about the same height, and just had him under the sheet. So luckily it wasn't a stupid question.
No.
Well, there are no stupid questions.
Well, there you go. Helen, what were your thoughts?
Sadly, I didn't see this at the cinema, but I did see this when it first came to Netflix, probably about a year ago. Wasn't it? It's been on there. It was one that I really wanted to see. Just something about, I remember seeing the trailer and just thinking there was something just really unique about it. And I really love it. It's not much happens.
No.
But also a lot is kind of said or not said. And it's one of those beautiful films, isn't it?
It's one of those films that's kind of hard to get past someone who's not into films in a way.
Yeah, selling this to other people is nearly impossible, I feel like, and explaining why you like it is tough. I was a bit mixed on it when I saw. I did see it in the cinema, and I'm very glad I did because I agree with you. It's because I tried to watch it again for this week, and I'll be honest, my attention kept wandering because I was watching it at home. So it does benefit from the cinema experience really, really well, but in unobvious ways because it's so quiet and so insular and a little bit navel-gazy, but not always in a bad way. I don't know. I wish I liked it more than I do. I feel like I get it, and I feel like what it's doing is good, but sometimes I just find it frustratingly. It felt self-conscious to me, especially there's a party scene where there's a guy expounding his philosophy on life, the universe, and everything. And I felt
Who here has kids?
That's,
William Oldman.
That's Bonnie Prince Billy playing that part. And Kesha is also in that party scene. She's the person he's doing the magic trick for.
Yes, I remember that now.
Yeah. But it just felt a bit sort of philosophy undergraduate.
See, that's really interesting because I read that scene in completely the opposite way, because I think that is clearly supposed to be a pretentious man at a party. He's supposed to be a bore at a party. And so obviously like outlining the themes of the film that I feel like Larry's almost preempting the film's criticisms. It's like, I feel like it sort of skewers the whole film. It's like right down the middle to go, let's just have a scene where the sort of guy who'd have watched this film and then comes out and tells you what it was about, let's just put that in the film.
Yeah. I kind of get that, because there is obviously comedy here, because it's literally a ghost in a sheet with two holes cut in the face. So, there is an element of, self-parody.
Sure.
What did you guys make of the pie scene? Because that scene tends to be a scene that people dive in or fully in or dive out at.
I mean, it's apparently she'd never eaten a pie before. Had you heard this?
This is true.
Is this actually true?
Yeah.
This is true.
What did
she's an
David
adult.
say what kind of pie it was?
Do you know what?
It was
the pie story is so weird. I actually printed it out
nice.
because
I'd
no
love
one
to
can
hear it.
believe that Rooney Mara had never eaten a pie before. And she says it's because she was a very fussy eater and a strange picky child, she said. However, I think it's because she's a billionaire.
Is she?
Yeah, and that's the truth. Like, her mum's family owned the Pittsburgh Steelers,
Yeah.
and her
Oh, wow.
dad's family owned the New York Giants. So the Maras are insanely wealthy. I just think rich people don't eat pies.
Pie wasn't on the menu.
But she said it's just because, and the pie was, this is terrible, a vegan, gluten-free, low-sugar chocolate cream pie. And it's the first and last pie she's ever eaten.
That doesn't deserve to be called a pie.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
It doesn't sound fun, does it?
No. That's nothing what any kind of pie is about. Pies are about sugar, they're about fun, they're about tasty fillings.
So would you have had like 3/4 of the pie yourself, but if it's a super tasty, what would be your ideal pie?
I don't know, are you talking sweet or savoury now? I
Any.
wasn't prepared with notes to talk about pies.
Top of your head.
You didn't bring pie notes?
No.
Oh, dear.
Lemon meringue pie.
Pie facts I wrote rather than pie notes.
Lemon meringue pie for me, I think, would have been my
Key lime pie, I think.
key lime.
I think if you've got to eat the entire thing in 8 minutes, probably going for something low sugar, would be a good option.
Oh, but you got to go method, haven't you?
It's true. And she
Yeah.
does vomit. I mean, in all seriousness, I think it's an incredible scene. And I think I'm going to keep saying remarkable, which is a really pat thing to say, but it's true. It is a remarkable film. And there's no dialogue for sort of 12 minutes. And she's eating that pie for just 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And to be sat in a cinema with a room full of people just sat watching Rooney Mara eat a pie sounds ridiculous. It sounds like someone taking the piss out of this kind of film. But I think it's a really profound scene about grief. You can see everything about her internal life in that performance.
Yeah.
I saw it as well at Sundance London.
Were you there?
Yeah, I was there. I was one of the press people. I was there. I had a press pass, and I was there with the junket. I didn't get to speak to David Lowery, but I didn't know who he was. But Sam Clements, who's been on this podcast off of Bitch Houses, he was interviewing David Lowery, and I was like, "Who's that guy with the eyes?
Yeah,
I don't know
he's
what
so
he looks like."
handsome.
And then I found out it's David Lowery afterwards. I was like, "Yeah." And then when you said he's a very attractive guy, I was like, "Yeah, I can see that. He is."
We had a great unwritten feature at Empire that they would never let us write,
Right.
which was fit directors. But he was a perennial feature on that list,
Yeah.
I'll be honest. He is one of the fit directors who we were never allowed to profile.
Yeah.
Why are you not allowed to?
I don't know, something about it being disrespectful. I don't know. It was outrageous to me, but yeah.
One of the things that I take away from this film a lot is the one song that is the film. I listened, like last year on when Spotify for the first time told you which song you listen to the most. That was on that list along with everything from Hamilton was in there, and the version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps by Regina Spektor.
Oh yes, from
Cuba and the Two
Cuba and the Two Strings.
Those are like my top 30 songs. What do you guys? Is it? I don't know. What do you guys think of it? You said you love it.
I really like it. I Shazammed it when I watched the film the first time.
Okay.
And I Shazammed it again when I rewatched it. So it's now featured on 2 of my
on your
playlists.
playlist.
And yeah, And when I mentioned to Reese that I'd rewatched this, he hummed the song from it because that's obviously the thing that he'd taken away the most. But yeah, I like the song.
What did Reese say as a non-cinema fan? Non-cinephile, not to the extent yourself.
Boy, he claims to say that he likes films where nothing really happens. So
Great.
yeah, he liked it.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, on the other hand, a lot happens.
Yeah.
A lot happens, but...
Yeah. But in short, concentrated bursts
Yeah.
between long
Yeah.
periods of nothing
Yeah.
happening. I mean, this isn't Patterson where nothing happens in a really great way. More happens than that. That's my baseline of
More happens
nothing
than-
happening.
More happens than Patterson.
Yeah. I mean, now, to be clear, I'm hugely recommending Patterson to
I love
everyone
it.
listening.
I love it.
But nothing happens in Patterson. And this one, there's
Somebody dies pretty early on.
someone dies early
Yeah.
on, and then there's the whole that it goes through a very long period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, a very long
and
period of time,
backwards,
yeah.
and then
back
through it again.
Yeah, yeah.
I like how it played with time here. I felt almost like Nolan-esque in the way he played with those time themes and the interstellar kind of aspects of going back to the start and revisiting those. And I think that again would be another place where people think, nah, this is completely not the film for me. I mean, what were your thoughts on the time themes?
I'm very interested in time and kind of scared of it, which is why I think it's a good choice for a film like this. I think if you think about time too much, it's terrifying. After I read a book at university called The Child in Time by Ian McEwan, I became very interested in time being non-linear, which this film kind of explores. And I tried to read a physics book on it called Wholeness in the Implicate Order.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I couldn't do it. I literally couldn't do it. I couldn't get past the first chapter. But it does kind of explore the same sort of themes as this film, like the way that we view time as a straight line and kind of us traveling through it is not how it works. And I think it's a very difficult thing to explore, that notion, especially in, a narrative film. And I think it does it incredibly well. And I think it's quite profound, really.
Yeah, it does it quite poignantly. I do like the
does.
time stuff more than some aspects of the film, I'll be honest. But because I feel like that's, it's that sort of centrality of memory and that the idea that what matters to this ghost, it allows him to control or shape, what he experiences a little bit.
Yeah.
And that he can, he realizes that what he needs to do is go back essentially to the beginning and goes a little bit too far and has to wait around a bit. But is to try and get back to this one moment that he still needs to figure out, he still needs to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all haunted by our memories, and this is a very obviously literal expression of that. I think it does the time stuff incredibly successfully, and I think it's a really hard thing to do in a film. Outside of Back to the Future, obviously.
Yeah.
The future. Yeah.
But I mean, obviously Endgame has changed the kind of dynamics of how time works in
Careful now, no spoilers.
I'm not spoiling, it's just there is a time heist. It's in the synopsis. I found it harder to watch this time around. I think I super enjoyed watching it the first time in somewhere like Picture House, especially like Sundance, London, where you're surrounded by people who are happy to let a film take over them.
Yeah.
I think this in A&O, the multiplex, would have gone down not so well in places. So I think I was really keen to watch it again. And when you suggested it, I was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But then it was, I think like yourself, Helen, I found it difficult to pay attention the second time at home.
Yeah, I think the first time I watched it, I was you are more focused on what you're expecting. It throws you off balance pretty early on by, the aspect ratio kind of throws you off balance and the way the film's shot. So you feel like you're an observer quite early on. And in the start of the film, he's using some horror tropes to make you wonder whether, there's a lot of lingering shots on darkened doorways where something could jump out, and of course it's not going to. But the first time you watch it, you don't know that.
Yeah.
So I was more focused on what kind of film is this going to be, what's going to happen. And this time round, which is actually the first time I've rewatched it since seeing it in the cinema, I was thinking more about the craft of it, I think, and appreciating the little details. Things like, thinking about the aspect ratio and thinking about the score. I loved David Lowery, and I'd really loved Pete's Dragon before I saw this, I was very excited to see it. And I loved The Old Man and the Gun recently. I think he's a really, really interesting director, putting out incredibly varied films. But he always works with Dan Hart, the composer, and he'd done this quite traditional score for Pete's Dragon, and then this, which is just it's a silent movie in a lot of places, and the music is doing a lot of the work for you. I mean, that song really stands out, but I think the music throughout and the sound throughout, just the way they use just the noise of the world, when she's in the hospital and you can just hear what's going on in the corridors, when there's no score, just the sound of the wind over the end credits. So I think because I was viewing it with a more critical eye, because I was thinking about, I'm going to have to talk about this film, I enjoyed it just as much. Had I just been sat, just looking at Twitter, I wouldn't have done.
Were you wearing like headphones, or do you have a decent sound system? Or was it?
I've just got a bog standard telly.
All right. Fair enough. I don't know. Should we head to scores, or is there anything else you guys want?
I was going to say, I really like the bit where the two ghosts have a conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, that was interesting. And it kind of opened up questions for me, though. Like, I was like, well, so are there almost none? And so, like, in all the time, we only really see it, once, maybe twice?
You see it twice, but then we don't see any other ghosts anywhere else. So it happens to be in the house opposite to them.
Yeah.
Are they in some kind of weird vortex where the ghosts...
Where there's ghosts, none on the way home from the hospital, like even in the distance. I don't know, I maybe wanted... But maybe that's not what the film is about, obviously, and I get that. But at the same time, it sort of hinted at things that it then didn't ever go back to, and I find that a little bit...
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's trying to sort of say this is what the afterlife is like. I mean, obviously, it's more focused with metaphor than it is on anything else. But I think those scenes they're very funny, and again, I think they use the score really beautifully in those. But also just really incredibly sad, and there's something in that, when the subtitle comes up and the other ghost says they don't remember who they're waiting for. That's just a beautifully... I think I cried the second time, seeing that again. Even though it's literally two guys under sheets looking out the window with the subtitle on.
Yeah.
I wonder how many times they change the subtitles together and on different test audiences.
Maybe they're just telling knock jokes the first time. Like, we don't know.
I mean, should we talk about Casey Affleck? Should we?
Casey? Can do.
He's not a billionaire, just in case you wondered.
So,
I think Casey Affleck is one of the reasons I have a little bit of a hesitation about this film, I guess. I just find it quite hard to want the best for him. That sounds mean. Wow. But I just, we've obviously all heard the stories about his conduct in the past, and it just kind of colours my perception of him a little bit more than I would like it to. Having said that, I loved Manchester by the Sea.
That was the same year as this, wasn't it?
Yeah, same year as it. Extraordinary film. An extraordinary performance, and, full credit for his talent in that. But I felt like in this case, especially, maybe because he was, again, paired with a much younger woman, which I don't love on screen, it made it hard for me to invest in them as a couple and want her to mourn for him.
Yeah.
And therefore it kind of maybe gave me that little bit of distance from the film that kind of stopped me loving it as much as I think I kind of should.
That's fair. I think I'm relatively successful at it. It's just the way I watch things is that I don't really think about that when I'm watching it. I might think about it afterwards, but the whole, separating art from artist thing is a tricky one, but it doesn't cross my mind when I'm watching it. I think in terms of their relationship, I think it's an interesting one because I don't think it's necessarily supposed to be a particularly good relationship.
No, that's true.
And certainly when when he goes back and he's effectively haunting himself, and we see kind of a montage of him observing what is quite bad behaviour, really. And she doesn't seem particularly happy. Yeah. I don't think there's a sense that they necessarily would have stayed together. It seemed like that move was...
It's going to be make or break anyway.
Apart. Yeah. And, he got what he wanted. He's trapped in that house forever.
With the piano.
With the piano.
See, I think the relationship is a little bit more idealised than that. I know that they do show obviously the fights and the compromises and the things that aren't quite working, but the sheer fact of the ghost existence and his obsession with that message in the wall feels like it's meant to be saying that, it is a true love, and it's a true love that is imperfect, and that even those are hard and take work, and you'll disagree sometimes. And, it felt very much like it was kind of glorifying that relationship.
Because
despite trying to give it nuance.
Sure, yeah.
Because when the ghost actually reads the message, that's when it was absolved of any kind of requirement to stay in this
Yeah,
in this realm, I guess,
from the
wasn't it?
unfinished business trope. This is how we know ghosts work. This is one thing we know about ghosts. It's interesting that he chooses not to go. Not to go into the light. He obviously feels for whatever reason that he wants to go back, and spend some time with her. Yeah. I think it's up for debate. I think there's room. I mean, it's a film with basically no dialogue, so there's a lot of room for interpretation.
That is true.
And you are presuming a lot about their internal lives, but I think, regardless of anything else, they're both very fine actors, and I think they do a lot with stillness and silence. And
I think how
I'm very into that. I like films where nothing happens too.
I think how the way they set it up with that. With that decision to move house or stay there, and the way they played that out in that maybe 5 minutes at the start, set them up as the couple they're going to be for the rest of the film really, really well. People have had those discussions when they've been in relationships of whether to stay or whether to go, but there's an underlying thing there about perhaps not being so happy in your status quo or your relationship. So him wanting to stay is indicative of something else, whereas hers wanting to move on is perhaps indicative of something else. And I think with those few pages of this script must have been super short, so that must have covered the bulk of him, that and the Bolly and Prince Charlie party sketch and the bit of Spanish in the middle. The scripts would have been super, super slim in this, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, for both David Lowery and Dan Hart, because they work very closely together. I think they both talk about it being. I seem to remember from the Q&A that there's a lot of first draft about this film. It's just something that they wanted to get out. It's another thing I wanted to mention, which is maybe worth talking about, is there's another film to be made here about that poor Spanish family that he wants.
Yes. They're in a horror movie.
Yeah, they really are, in a genuine horror movie. And again, I guess ghost rules apply in that, as in Patrick Swayze rules. If you're angry enough,
you can
apparently throw shit around.
I love that we have Patrick Swayze ghost rules.
Yes. Yeah.
That is my de facto ghost. In the same way, Back to the Future is my time story film.
Yeah, sure.
Ghost is my ghost film.
I've watched a lot of Supernatural on TV, so I have my own ghost rules.
Okay.
Find the bones, salt and burn, and they're gone. Yeah.
Salt and burn.
Top
know.
tip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Burn, there you go. Yeah.
But yeah, it was, again, I think we're sort of cast in the role of observer in this film, and I think it is shot in a way to make us feel
Helen's making notes there. Like, salt and burn, fine bones.
How to
Okay.
kill ghosts. Well, it's important to know just in case. And that those few scenes are another good example of that. Of they don't subtitle the Spanish, so we've got no idea.
I was thinking that.
What this?
Yeah.
I mean, if you
can
speak
kind of work
Spanish,
out,
then you'll, but I don't speak Spanish, so I can only presume. I mean, I've got a pretty good guess. Mum, there's a ghost.
No, there's not.
Yeah. That's basically that.
Oh God, there was a ghost.
Yeah.
We better move.
Should we head to the scores, guys?
All right.
Let's head to the scores. Welcome to the spreadsheet of dreams. Yeah,
It's very detailed.
Thank you. It's a thing of wonder. So all the scores are out of 5. You may have decimal places, and we'll start with you, Zoe, because you picked the film with the recommendability score.
I mean, it's going to suffer in this category, isn't it? Which is a great shame, because I love this film, but there are a limited number of people that I would recommend it to. So I'm going to say 2.5, because the people that I know would love it will love it, but you can't recommend it to everyone.
Helen.
I was thinking exactly the same number. Yeah. I'm just really excited about being able to use fractions because we don't on Empire. So this is exciting.
Go nuts.
Yeah, I'll say 2.5 in that case.
Sure.
Whew. Danger.
Helen.
I'm going to give it a 4. I mean, I can't give it a 5 because there is people who won't enjoy it, and it is quite a hard sell. But I think for anyone who hasn't seen it and is vaguely interested in it, or likes kind of beautiful films that have ambiguous kind of endings and stories, and is interested in this kind of cinema, then yeah, you should definitely watch it and make up your own mind about it. But yeah, I would still recommend it to pretty much everyone anyway.
I'm gonna go for a 3 here. There would be massive caveats, and I would pick the people who I would recommend it to most certainly. And I think it would be a case of, dude, you loved Ghost Story. Don't worry about it. Just put it on and make sure you've got nothing else to do at the time, and let's have a chat afterwards. But those people are few and far between. I think even the quiz team people, I think a lot of people would be exasperated by.
But we wouldn't
By it.
recommend them to that.
You what? Sorry.
Yeah, but then you'd pick who you recommend them to.
Well, exactly. But that's why the recommendability score kind of wanes, is lower than that. I think.
Yeah, that's how I was understanding it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's how I think people
The
play
more
it differently.
caveats, the lower the recommendability.
That's it, yeah. But I really did enjoy it. Like I said, like with yourself, Zoe, when I first watched it, I came out thinking, whoa, that's fucking amazing. I was there at the end, sitting in the chair going, love that. But then I couldn't I couldn't sit and watch this with my wife.
And this scoring system is very different. You know, I certainly would have walked out of that cinema and said that's a 5-star film, but that's not.
That's not this.
That's
That's not the scoring
That's not
system.
the question. Yeah.
I'm just a bit more wild with why
You are.
my recommendations.
I love it.
Repeat viewing score, Zoe. This is the second time watching.
It is the second time I've watched it in the space of a couple of years, and I loved it. So for me personally, and I will watch it again, and it's only an hour and 32 minutes long, which is great. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Helen, do you want an explanation of the repeat viewing score? Sorry.
Wrong box.
Yeah.
I figure it's the likelihood of you watching it again, right?
Yes, likelihood of you watching again, or I mean, with older films as well, it's how many times you've watched it before, and kind of bundle that into a score of joy.
I'll be honest, I'm going to go quite low on this one.
Sure.
Because I'm glad that
You're not offending us.
No.
Like-
I'm saying I'm glad that I've seen it, but this is not something I would have sat down and watched again without the reason of coming
I'm
here.
sorry.
No. But I mean, you know, I didn't hate it. I was just a bit like I was aware I was struggling to concentrate. So I'm going to go 2 here.
Sure. Helen.
So it's kind of strange. When Zoe picked it, I was like, oh, great. I'm going to get to watch that again. But watching it again, I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first time. And I don't know whether that was because I was only watching it for the purpose of refreshing anything that I might have forgotten.
Yeah.
Or the time of day that I watched it, because I watched it in the afternoon. So I don't know. I didn't get as much out of it. And I was also a little bit sad that I had re-watched it because I didn't get the feeling. So I'm going to go for a 2 as well.
So you would have liked to maintain the afterglow the first time.
I don't think I particularly got anything more from re-watching it.
Yeah. I'm going to go for 1.8. I don't think I'll watch it again anytime soon. But if someone did say, should I watch a ghost story and should we watch it now? I'd be like, okay, I've got nothing else to do. I'll watch it again with them. I would be quite happily on Twitter.
You can talk through it.
Yeah, I'd be quite happily like doing other things at the same time. So it'd be like, it wouldn't be that much. Well, this kind of ties in with the engagement score. 1.8. Small screen score. Zoe.
Well, it was fantastic in the cinema, and I think it is a greatly enhanced experience in the cinema. But watching it on my crappy telly at home last night, I cried twice, so I'm going to give it 3.5.
Helen.
I'll go 3 because again, I think, you know, it's definitely worth seeing, but it does suffer a little bit if you have the potential to be distracted, and so you kind of want to pull the curtains and turn the phone off and try and force yourself to really concentrate on this, I think.
Helen.
So as I mentioned, sadly I did not see this at the cinema, but I feel you can recreate these conditions by not watching it in daylight, which is what I did the second time around. I don't recommend that. So it needs to be dark. I don't think the size of the screen is that important. So you could have it on a laptop or a nice TV, as long as that you've got good sound to go with it. So you could in fact watch it on a laptop if you've got headphones.
Absolutely.
I think that works. Yeah. And if you've got a TV having the sound, but you've got to create the conditions for it to work for you. So, I mean, first time I watched it in the dark at home, and I felt that the TV screen was fine for it because obviously it's not a big explosions or anything like that. So I'm going to go 3.5. It does work, but recreate cinema conditions if you can.
So we often talk about the need to see it on big screen and also compounding in that the cinematic experience of this when it comes to the small screen score. I'm going to give it a high small screen score because I think it works well from the visual aspect at home, but I think you need, as you so described, Helen, the need to try and recreate that kind of atmosphere, which is difficult to do. And like I say, watching it
Darkness and closeness.
Yeah, watching it Saturday, Sunday afternoon as I did, whilst also waiting for the washing to finish, just doesn't really work. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Were you washing sheets at the time?
You know what?
White
I was.
sheets.
Washing your ghost outfit ready for Sunday night.
Listen, can I cut holes in this? Will Sarah get angry? So I'm going to give it 4 for small screen score, but I think let's go to the engagement score, Zoe.
Is this if I want to get engaged to David Lowery?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
So that's a stone cold 800.
Can you remind me how I should be rating this?
So the engagement score is like how often were you looking at your phone? Were you waiting for your washing to dry and kept checking on the washing machine? So that would obviously be a low engagement. And, if you were like, I can't even go to the toilet, I'm having such a good time and so intensely focused.
Well, then 5, I think it's captivating.
Boom.
Yeah.
Helen.
Yeah, I'll go for a 2.5. I was engaged the first time, but I was totally not the second time. So,
Helen.
I was less engaged the second time round, but I think that's unfair on the film to do that because I knew I wasn't. The reason I watched at the time that I did that, I knew I could do something else sort of on the side. But I think I did have to force myself to really concentrate and watch it anyway the first time because it is really meandering. And if you are at home, you do have, like distractions. So you do have to really commit to it and go for it. 4.
Were you aware the first time you watched that you needed to be in that zone or you just happened to be in it? It was like a happy...
A little bit. I could sort of sense that I needed to kind of put my phone away and, focus a bit more than what I did and resist kind of the temptation to stop poking around on IMDb and things like that as sometimes you do.
Were you trying to find out who's under the sheet?
Pictures of David Lowery.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a 1 here for subsequent watching because the first viewing was like, I needed to be in there and that's one of the beauties of being in cinema. If you take your phone out, you're the worst person in the world.
The worst person.
But not that I would do that and you're just fully engaged. But this time I literally was like dancing around my room a bit and doing other things, checking Twitter, which is something I don't normally do when I watch films. So it just took me out of it. And I think this also ties in when Sam from Pitch House gave me the DVD of this and I thought, yes, but then haven't watched it since then. And that, I think there's testament to the fact that I think I knew that the optimum time for watching it was in the cinema.
Yeah.
And I think
that time has passed.
Yeah, that time has passed.
But not for Casey Affleck.
So I'm going to go for 1 here. And that gives us an overall score of 3.01875, which is, I think, this decent score.
It's still good. Yeah, anything over 3 is pretty good. I mean, it's if you've listened this far and you haven't seen it and you're still wondering whether you should, I mean, yeah, go for it. It's only an hour and a half. If it was 2 hours, then I'd be like, oh, it's 2 hours. But an hour and a half, there's so many awful films that are
way longer,
than that.
So
and
there's worse films, so why not watch this one?
Yeah. So we reached out to guys on Twitter before we record and tell them what we're about to watch and who is in the room. In this case, we're reviewing a ghost story with Zosrat and Helen O'Hara. So I don't know why I did it that way. And asked them to give us a shout out on Flixwatcher. And we got a decent set of responses for this, actually. I thought there was going to be less. Zoe, would you mind reading out the first one?
Sure. Unstuck in time, besheeted solitary soul seeks. I've got a slight lisp. This is unfair. Unstuck in time, besheeted solitary soul seeks connection with his bereaved wife. Curious, near speechless soliloquy. Deft and dry examination of longing and loneliness.
And that's 3 sheets out of 5 ghosts.
Yeah, I don't understand that scoring system.
I think we asked for a 5-star rating, and that's
no. I understand that, but I don't understand the sheets to ghost ratio.
I think it's just trying to be playful.
Sure. Okay.
Helen,
that was from Top Film Tip.
That's
Thanks for that
Top
one.
Film Tip. Helen, can you take Pete Langhelt's?
Langholt.
It's easier to read.
Yes, Pete Langholt says, I loved it. My wife was horribly bored. I give it 4 out of 5 or 8 out of 10. My wife gives it But he did say it's a movie that will make you think about life, not on a personal level, but a spiritual one. I love how it made me see the world after I'd watched it. And no pun intended, it's a haunting experience. I see what you did there, Pete. Well done.
Sure.
Cheers, Pete. Helen, do you want to say the last one?
So the last one is from the IMDb Journey podcast. Rooney Mara puts in a great performance in a film where if you can get past the multiple scenes of silence and stillness, which started to grate on me, this is a pretty good film, and that's 3.5 stars.
Yeah, 3 stars and a small star.
Yeah.
I'll call it that.
I think we could do with a bit more silence and stillness in the world. This is also like, I've never seen a film like this.
No.
You know, this is a pretty original.
But this is the great thing about cinema these days, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, people complain that, it's all very homogenized now. And, certainly there are sequels we don't need and remakes we don't want. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there are...
So was that Aladdin?
But there are extraordinary things happening right now in cinema, and this is one of them. And I for all my criticism of it and my slight reservations about it, I'm very glad that I saw it. And it's one of those films I'm glad exists.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is why... Sorry, Karen.
No, I was just going to say, and not just because I'm a pervert, I am genuinely very excited to see what David Lowery does next, because his career is fascinating.
Yeah.
And he's doing really extraordinary things. And Yeah,
I do love those directors who can just turn their hand to any different genre. It's always fun.
Yeah, I mean, if this sounds a bit slow paced and not enough fun for you, then watch Pete's Dragon or The Old Man and the Gun. They're fantastic fun.
Yeah.
Really fun.
I'll recommend those as well. Okay. Thank you, Helen and Zoe, for coming on.
Pleasure.
Can you just let everyone know where they can find you online, or any places to, for you, Helen, find your book and books?
Probably should, yeah.
And Zoe, where we can find you online to hear your musings on other films, other David Lowery films?
Well, or just David Lowery. I'm on Twitter at Zozrat. But I would love it if you checked out the King's Place website and looked at all of our fantastic comedy and podcast programming, including regular live shows from Empire, which are a joy. The London Podcast Festival will be coming up in September. Come on down. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at Helen L. O'Hara, and I don't know. I'm around. I never know where else I'm on the Empire podcast pretty much every week. And as Zoe says, we're at the London Podcast Festival pretty much every year, and every so often for other things.
Yes.
We just did an Avengers spoiler special live, which was a lot of fun.
And sold out in 6 days.
Yeah.
Which is mad.
I couldn't be there.
It was mad. But it was a lot. It was a real giggle. So thanks to everyone who came.
And what's the name of your books so people can do a quick Google?
Do you know what? I don't know, because they've published it under 2 different names and I can never remember. I think it's basically the best 80s movies. Yep. If you look up Helen O'Hara on Amazon and 80s, I think it comes up. You might get the American edition though, so look around. And it's on sale in the works. So you might be able to find it there for £2.50.
Oh, fantastic.
Bargain.
Yeah.
Okay. Cheers.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah. That's it.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks as always, guys, for listening to this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast. Take a moment to hit subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and also leave us a little cheeky review, because that really helps us. It really does. Also, do find us on social media. We are on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod, and also Instagram, just at FlixWatcher.
Special thanks to our awesome editor, Brendan Russell, for making this episode sound so sweet. And thanks to the mighty people for the tunes you can hear.